Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Today I'm recording this video on July 1st, 2025, so on Tuesday, July 1st, and this video is going to be talking about President Donald Trump's daughter-in-law, Lara Trump, among other Republican names who are being floated for U.S. Senate. And Trump may look to his daughter-in-law to defend the Senate seat in the key battleground state. This article I'm reading is by Fox News by reporter Paul Steinhauser. So President Trump called Senator Thom Tillis's announcement that the two-term Republican senator won't seek re-election next year as, quote, great news in North Carolina. And with Tillis, who Trump torched this past weekend for not supporting his so-called big beautiful bill, spending and tax cut bill in a key test vote, now out of the picture in the midterms, it's likely the president and his political team will be the kingmakers in the selection of the next GOP nominee in North Carolina. It's the president's choice. The president and his team will have those conversations, a Republican operative pointing to Trump's immense sway over the GOP told Fox News. Does he have great choices? Absolutely, said the strategist, who asked to remain anonymous to speak freely. Likely at the top of the list is Lara Trump, the president's daughter-in-law who served last year amid the 2024 presidential campaign as co-chair of the Republican National Committee, also commonly known as the RNC. Lara Trump, who grew up in Wilmington, North Carolina, and attended undergraduate studies at North Carolina State University, NC State, is married to the president's son, Eric. She stepped down from her post at the RNC late last year and currently hosts My View with Lara Trump on the Fox News channel. The Republican strategist highlighted that Lara Trump has the name, but beyond that, she is a fundraising powerhouse, and she has the discipline to be an incredible candidate and senator if she chooses to. She's probably the only person who should have considering in the same sentence because she is the president's daughter-in-law, and that will be a consideration. 4 years ago, Lara Trump considered making a bid for an open Senate seat in North Carolina in the 2022 midterm elections. It would be an incredible thing. It's my home state, a state I love so much. And look, I think we need some strong Republicans in Washington, D.C., she told Fox at the time. She ultimately decided against launching a campaign, citing her two young children as the main reason for her decision. But she did leave open the possibility of a future run for office in her home state. Lara and Eric Trump own a home in Florida, and Lara Trump's name was briefly mentioned late last year as a potential successor to Republican Senator Marco Rubio of Florida, who was nominated by Trump to serve as Secretary of State in his second administration. After an incredible amount of thought, contemplation, and encouragement from so many, I decided to remove my name from consideration for the United States Senate, she said in a statement near the end of December. Now, another name being floated in North Carolina is Republican National Committee Chair Michael Whatley. Whatley has served 5 years as chair of the North Carolina GOP before Trump early last year picked him to succeed Ronna McDaniel as the RNC chair. Chairman Whatley is honored to have been asked by President Trump to serve as the chair of the Republican National Committee following a hugely successful 2025 and is focused on growing Republican majorities in Congress, an RNC advisor told Fox News when asked about the Senate race. Another name that comes up is Representative Richard Hudson, who for a second straight cycle is chair of the National Republican Congressional Committee. Along with Whatley, Hudson, who for over a decade has represented a congressional district in the central section of North Carolina, is a strong Trump ally. A source familiar to Fox News that Hudson is tight with the Trump world, and if they really wanted him to run, he wouldn't tell them no. A trio of first-term Republican congressmen in North Carolina may also have interest in the race to succeed Tillis. Sources confirmed to Fox News that Representative Pat Harrigan is eyeing a bid. Representative Tim Moore and Brad Knott may have interest, and four-term GOP Rep Murphy may consider a run. Some national Republicans are relieved that Tillis isn't seeking re-election. Tillis, who has long been an independent thinker who crossed the political aisle to seek compromise, doesn't poll well with the MAGA base. Some Republican operatives familiar with the Senate races suggested that the GOP would have an easier time energizing base voters and a smaller midterm electorate with a more conservative candidate than Tillis on the 2026 ballot as the GOP's nominee in North Carolina. That is a point I did make in a previous video from a few days ago, was that I actually think Republican turnout would be better with another candidate other than Tillis, and the article here does agree with that. and Trump loyalists saw the Tillis announcement as further proof of the president's immense hold over the GOP. Tillis, in a statement, noted that in Washington over the last few years, it's become increasingly evident that leaders who are willing to embrace bipartisanship, compromise, and demonstrate independent thinking are becoming an endangered species. In the race for the Democratic Senate nomination, former Representative Willie Nickel, a trial lawyer and former state senator, launched a bid earlier this year. But all eyes are on the former two-term governor of North Carolina, Democrat Roy Cooper, who is considering a run. Cooper is viewed as the most formidable and prominent potential Democratic candidate for a seat his party is aiming to flip from red to blue. But no Democrat has won a Senate race in North Carolina since 2008. Hours after Tillis' announcement on Sunday, a top nonpartisan political handicapper shifted their rating on the North Carolina Senate race from lean Republican to toss-up. The surprise move from Tillis moves this race into the toss-up category and officially makes the Tar Heel State Democrats' top pickup opportunity, said the Cook Report's Jessica Walter. Now look, this article went over a lot of points, and again, a lot of them are true here. I think Thom Tillis not being the Republican nominee, I actually do think does give the Republicans a better chance at winning this race. But that doesn't guarantee them that they are going to do so. When you look at the recent election results for Thom Tillis in 2020, he only defeated the Democrat Cal Cunningham by 1.7% of the vote. He got 48.69%. Back in 2014, Tillis only got 48.82%. It's possible in 2026, Tillis could have exceeded his margins, but with how upset a lot of the MAGA wing of the Republican Party is long as the president, as well as them being very upset with Tillis, the odds of him doing much better than that number were not very high. And again, if you're a Republican in North Carolina, you have to prepare for the possibility that you're going up against the former Democratic governor, Roy Cooper, who, again, no matter how many times I stress this point, it will keep coming up. Just because you are a popular governor of a state does not guarantee you will become a senator in that state if you run. You can ask Larry Hogan in Maryland that, you can ask Steve Bullock in Montana, or Phil Bredesen in Kentucky. But that also doesn't mean that it's impossible that a governor can become senator from the state in a very close election. You can ask Rick Scott from Florida that. Or if the state is leaning one political party, a governor can become senator. You can ask John Hickenlooper in Colorado. So more times than not, a candidate that was a governor that's running for Senate a lot of the time does not win. But as Florida and Colorado showed, it can happen. And in a state that's so competitive, like Florida in 2018 at the time, or North Carolina in 2026 potentially, there is a real opportunity here that Cooper could win. And that's something that's interesting I've noticed is a lot of the discourse on this race. Democrats seem to think for sure they're going to win now that Thom Tillis is not running, and I vehemently disagree with that. Republicans think that Tillis is not running, think that the Republicans are automatically going to win, and I vehemently disagree with that as well. I think this race is as close to a toss-up 50-50 as a race could possibly be. I think if Cooper is the Democratic nominee, this is the best Democrats could put up for this race in the state of North Carolina and gives them the best chance at winning this race. It's also worth noting Cooper did leave office with relatively pretty high approval numbers, but at the same time, just because he did very well in the governor's race in 2020, winning by 4.5% does not guarantee he's going to win, but it does give him a better chance at winning. Both in 2020 when he won and 2016 where Cooper won by 0.22% against Pat McCrory, getting around 49% of the vote, I think it's more likely Cooper gets closer to his 2016 number of 49% than to his 2020 number of about 51.5 or so. So if you're looking at that 2016 number where Cooper got 49%, the Republican candidate has to be able to break 49% in all likelihood to win this race, something that Thom Tillis has not once been able to do in his two elections. So on that standpoint, I think the Republicans are getting a little lucky here. Ted Budd in 2022 got 50.5% of the vote in this race against Democrat Cheryl Beasley. And again, assuming Roy Cooper can get up to around 49% of the vote, whoever the Republican is has to be able to break 50% like Budd did in 2022. He was able to, Thom Tillis was not. Whoever the Republicans nominate has to be able to break that number. And as long as the Republicans put up a good candidate, there is at very least still a good shot that could happen. The problem is the Republican primary at this time is very wide open. We don't know who the Republican is going to be. But if it is Lara Trump, that could potentially clear the Republican primary out. A lot of top challengers will not seek to run against Lara Trump if she has the endorsement of President Trump. And if she's running in this race, she certainly will be having that endorsement. If it's Lara Trump versus Roy Cooper, they actually did do a poll on this from back in November 26th through 29th from Victory Insights, and it showed Roy Cooper starting out with a lead over Lara Trump with 46% to 44% of a sample of 800 likely voters, with 10% of the vote undecided. So I wouldn't be surprised if going into Election Day, we see some polls in North Carolina showing Roy Cooper defeating Lara Trump, but again, polls are one thing, election history is another. And the election history of North Carolina at the Senate level has shown it is a lean to likely Republican state in the case of 2016, but most of the time it is a lean Republican state. The last time I voted Democrat was 2008 for Democratic Senator Kay Hagan, and then she subsequently lost in 2014 versus Tom Tillis in a very close election. But North Carolina is a battleground state, but for the Republicans to lose in 2026, the Senate race, a few things in my view need to go right. Number one, the Democrats have to field their top candidate in Roy Cooper, which it's looking like the Democrats are going to be able to get him to run. It's not 100% definite that he will, but the latest rumors out of that state suggest that he is closer to running than to not running. So for the Democrats, that is very good news that Roy Cooper could run. But the Democrats are also going to need to get lucky with the 2026 election environment, because even though 2026 is supposed to be a Democratic-friendly midterm year, it doesn't always 100% work out that way. 2022 was supposed to be a bloodbath type of midterm year for the Republicans over the Democrats, and it really didn't end up being that way, especially at the Senate level. Republicans and Democrats ended up splitting the national vote overall. Now, it could be worth saying that there were some Senate elections up in states like New York and California that may have shifted the national vote. In 2026, there's not going to be a Senate race in New York or California, so there may not be as many Democratic votes. There also will be Republican Senate races in Texas and a lot of Republican states that may mess up the national vote numbers. But if the Democrats have a very good night, it gives them a great chance of winning this race. If the Republicans and Democrats are relatively even on this vote, or if the Republicans win the national vote by about 2% on the Senate side of things, that still could present a very good situation for the Republicans. Just to give you an idea of how it went in 2020, Democrats got 47, Republicans 49.3. Republicans won nationally by about 2.3%. And Tom Tillis won by about 1.7%. So Tillis won by about 0.6% to the left of what the national vote was in 2020. Now, the Republican candidate who is nominated, I think, is going to perform much stronger than Tom Tillis will. So I don't know if it'll be the exact same numbers. But if the Democrats are winning the national vote by only 1 point on the Senate side of things, maybe the Republican in North Carolina could still be winning that race. If the Democrats are winning the national Senate vote by like 4 points or something, well, then the closest we can say is in 2018, the Democrats won it by about 20 points. It's a much more Democratic-friendly map. But we did see a lot of Democrats winning in more red areas, like Ohio, for instance. We won't probably see this again in 2026. But again, just looking for what comparisons could be. 2016 maybe is another one. We saw close elections in New Hampshire and Wisconsin, Nevada, but each map is kind of different. 2014, the Republicans won by 7 points. And again, the Republicans did well pretty much everywhere. This particular map, the 2014 one, was up in 2008. And that one saw 52 to 44. So it's hard finding the right comparison, but the point I'm trying to make here is the overall election environment for 2026 could play a very important role in this as well. If come November of 2026, historical precedent is true and the Democrats are in for a big election win against the Republicans and a big indictment on President Trump, that's going to probably help the Democrats flip the House and be very good news for the Democrats on the Senate. We probably see Democrats hold on and win again in Georgia, in Michigan, in New Hampshire, and then we can also see Democrats potentially go on the offensive in places like Maine and maybe North Carolina as well. But if the president and the Republicans are polling relatively strongly, it's possible Republicans hold on to Maine and North Carolina and still remain competitive in Georgia and Michigan. So election environment is going to play a big role as well. As for my most recent prediction on this race, I did have it listed as tilt Republican, and for today's video, I am still leaving it in lean Republican. I do truthfully, honestly have this race right now listed as a 50-50 toss-up, but I really don't like seeing one race being toss-up while the rest of them are all given a characterization. I'd rather be bold than just leave it as toss-up. So as if the election were held today, I honestly think the Republican would win it by less than half a percentage point against Roy Cooper. But if come election day 2026, Roy Cooper were to win, I would not be surprised one bit. I do think Roy Cooper can win this Senate race, and Democrats have optimism to do so, and I totally understand why. But I do think the Republican identity of North Carolina, as of right now, does outweigh Cooper's strong candidacy at this point in time. But if Cooper were to win by under half a percentage point, again, I really would not be surprised one bit, because Cooper is a uniquely strong Democratic candidate in a midterm election that's supposed to be Democratic friendly. All their points and trends and such are all on the Democrat side for flipping the Senate race. The only thing that's holding it back is that this is more of a lean Republican state than I would argue than a toss-up state in recent elections at the Senate and presidential level. However, how that all unfolds in 2026, we're going to have to wait and see to find out. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like and subscribe if you did. Leave a comment below, tell me your thoughts, and I hope to see you in a future video. Hello everyone, and welcome to today's video. Today I am breaking down Emerson's newest poll for the 2028 Democratic and Republican nomination, and it shows some very interesting findings for this 2028 race. The June 2025 national poll, Democratic nomination up for grabs as Harris loses edge, Vance frontrunner in 2028 GOP race. So the poll begins by saying that a new Emerson College polling survey of U.S. voters finds that President Donald Trump with a 45% approval rating and 46% disapproval rating. Since the 100-day Emerson poll, Trump's approval rating remained at 45%, while his disapproval rating increased from 45 to 46%. A majority of voters, 52%, say things in the United States are generally on the wrong track, while 48% of things are headed in the right direction. A relatively even split on how the people of the United States and the country view things are going. Just to give you a trend line of how President Trump has done, back in January when Trump took office, the poll had him at 49% approve to 41% disapprove. February had Trump at 48 approve, 42 disapprove. March 3rd, Trump fell to 48 approve, 43% disapprove. March 10th was a relatively high mark on the disapprove side. Trump approves at 47, or approve and was at 47, disapproves at 45. April, it was net even, 45 to 45. And now in June, this is the first time it's been negative for Trump, 45 approve, 46 disapprove. As for 2026 on the generic ballot, 43% of voters plan to support the Democratic candidate, while 40% plan to support the Republican candidate. 18 points at this time, or 18% at this time, are undecided. Looking ahead to the next year's midterm election, the Democrats have a slight edge over the Republicans, with independents breaking for the Democratic candidate 37 to 27%, Spencer Kimball, executive director of Emerson Polling, said. However, a significant 36% of independents are undecided, so this number is expected to shift. For the 2028 election, in the Democratic primary, 16% say they support former Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg, 13% support former Vice President Kamala Harris, 12% support California Governor Gavin Newsom, 7% support Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, and Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, respectively, has 5%, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, and New Jersey Senator Cory Booker with 3%, 23% are undecided at this time. And this part goes through all of the numbers here as well. I'll come back to this in 1 second. The November Emerson poll on the 2028 primary allowed voters to write in their preferred candidate. Harris received 37% of support. Newsom had 7%. Buttigieg had 4%. Shapiro and Whitmer both had 3%. A plurality of Republican presidential primary voters, 46%, support Vice President J.D. Vance in a hypothetical 2028 ballot test, while 12% support former Florida Senator and now Secretary of State Marco Rubio. 9% support Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, 5% support Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the Health and Human Services Secretary. In November, Vance received 30% of support, DeSantis had 5%, Kennedy had 2%, and Rubio had 1%. Vice President Vance has solidified himself as the frontrunner in the 2028 nomination contest, backed by 52% of male Republican primary voters and voters over 60, Kimball added. Again, I'll be coming back to this as well. On a generic 2028 presidential ballot test, 42% say they would support the generic Democrat, 42% the Republican, and 16% are undecided. So a lot of undecided vote left, but the early numbers show a very close and competitive election. Similarly to the generic ballot, independents break for the generic Democrat on the presidential ballot 37-29, with a significant 34% undecided. The economy remains the top issue for voters at 32%, down from 41% though in March. Threats to democracy are the top concern of 22% of voters, a 4-point increase. Immigration falls at 14%, healthcare at 9%, housing affordability at 7%, and crime at 5%. When it comes to immigration, a majority of voters, 68%, think birthright citizenship should continue for all born in the United States, while 32% of voters think it should be ended for children of undocumented immigrants. Support for birthright citizenship policy is highest among voters under 30 at 83%, and lowers steadily as voters' age increases. To 55% of voters over 70, Kimball added. Regarding deportations, 52% think the Trump administration has gone too far, while 25% think they have been about right, and 23% think they have not gone far enough. Voters were asked if they believed the Trump administration and news media have been generally truthful or generally untruthful, a question asked in the 2017 version of the Emerson poll. The Trump admin so far is viewed as being truthful by 40%, while 46% think the administration is untruthful, 14% are unsure. The news media is viewed as truthful by 29%, while 48% view it as untruthful. So based on those numbers, the Trump administration is viewed more truthfully by the American people than the overall news media. Compared to the first month of Trump's first term in February 2017, 49% perceive the Trump administration as truthful, 48% untruthful, and the news media 39% truthful and 53% untruthful. And it also goes into issues on foreign affairs and cryptocurrency in the 4th of July as well. But for the sake of today's video, I want to focus on the 2028 numbers. So on the Democratic side of things, it's very interesting now that there's still a lot of undecided vote at 23%, and obviously we're about 2 years away from things really starting to kick off for 2028, so it makes sense there's still a lot of undecided vote. But it is interesting. In past videos, if you are new to this channel, you may not have heard me say this yet. If you're a returning viewer, you may have heard me mention this, but I've said that Kamala Harris at this point in time, being the former vice president of the United States and the Democratic nominee for president in 2024, should be polling at first place in a lot of these early polls for 2028, because a lot of times these early primary polls are really a popularity contest. After the election, who is the Democrat that most Democrats have heard of and would support in the next election? Kamala Harris, who was just the Democratic nominee in every single state in the United States in 2024, she's the Democrat everyone has heard of the most, as Kamala Harris is the person that all those Democrats just voted for. So when you're asking who will be the next Democratic nominee for 2028, the former nominee usually starts off as the frontrunner because that's the person they've heard of. No disrespect to the other Democratic candidates, but they won't have as high name recognition as the former nominee. This has happened before. After, for instance, President Trump with 2016 and 2020 is kind of a special case because Trump did get elected president, and there was really not much doubt going from 2020 into 2024 that if President Trump ran again, he was going to be the Republican nominee. It was pretty much a lock solid that was going to happen. But early polls for 2020, some Democrats were considering supporting Hillary Clinton again. After 2012, in the early polls around 1 year after the 2012 election, Republicans were asked who they'd like to see. Mitt Romney was polling around the mid to high 30% or so in first place. This changes over the course of 2 or 3 years as nominations and party primaries get underway. But at this point in time, Harris should be leading. But in this poll, she's actually not. Pete Buttigieg is in first place at 16%. Harris is closely behind him at 13%, and Governor Gavin Newsom of California is at 12%. This is a pretty significant rise for Newsom, who started out by many as the presumptive 2028 Democratic nominee before the election if Harris were to lose, and then as recent polls have come out, it showed Buttigieg and Harris in first, but even AOC being in third place and Newsom usually being in fourth or fifth. In this poll, however, Newsom seems to have a higher floor of support at 12%, and it's interesting because Newsom on this list is probably one of the more well-known and well-heard of Democrats compared to some of the others on this list. But Newsom at 12 is pretty significant, shows that he's rising a little bit in the polls again in this poll. AOC being at 7 makes a lot of sense. Josh Shapiro at 7 is actually one of the highest I've seen Josh Shapiro be at for the Democratic primary in 2028. The more I think about Shapiro's candidacy, I think he's more likely to be a vice presidential pick than a presidential pick, even though as the presidential nominee, I think he'd be very formidable at the general election level. But I think he's probably more of a vice presidential pick at this point, but that could be interesting. Bernie Sanders, who has been with AOC going around the nation and doing a lot of Stop the Oligarchy tour, he's at 5%. Cory Booker, the New Jersey senator, is at 3. Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, is at 3. Andy Beshear, Kentucky governor, at 2. Pritzker, governor of Illinois, at 2. Westmore, governor of Maryland, at 2. Senator Amy Klobuchar at 1. Rahm Emanuel at 1. And someone else 2%, undecided 23. So right now, obviously, we're 2 years out. Most of these numbers, if not all these numbers, are going to change come 2028. Do all these candidates end up running come 2028? The odds say probably not, but a lot of them also probably will. So this will all likely change from now to 2028, but it is very significant to see that Pete Buttigieg in this poll being in first place shows Kamala Harris's honeymoon period as being a 2028 Democratic frontrunner is already starting to wane. And as Harris is considering running for governor of California in 2026, the odds aren't that likely that she's going to run for governor of California, win, and then turn around and run for president again in 2028. A lot of Californian voters may see that as her using the office as a stepping stone and something that politically doesn't happen all that often. Not impossible, but I would personally bet against that happening. Whereas on the Republican side of things, it's pretty clear. J.D. Vance, if he runs, is going to be the Republican nominee in 2028. This is all hugely contingent on how President Trump and the Trump administration is doing. Come 2028, as long as the country is doing well enough, then we could see something similar to maybe 2004, where the administration is viewed favorably and it could be a close election, but the Republicans could win. If we're seeing something like 2008, where the country is doing so poorly that the economy is doing bad, and something of that nature, and maybe a recession or a market crash, J.D. Vance could run, but he would probably get blown out in that election and may decide not to. However, it's all contingent on what happens over the next 2 years or so. If the Trump administration is viewed relatively similar to how they are today, I would bet on pretty much everything that J.D. Vance is going to run for president in 2028 and be pretty formidable. I don't know if he's going to do as well as President Trump did. In most of my early predictions, I think Vance doesn't get as much voter turnout as Trump, but I think he would start out with a relatively decent floor in a lot of these places as more Americans learn about who he is. But that's where things are on that point. Looking at the overall aggregate, I may be doing a future video on this as well, but the race to the White House average right now is Harris still leading at 22.4%, Buttigieg at 15%, but Harris's lead of 7.4% is a lot lower than what it was a few months ago, where she was up in even the 20 and 30 point range in terms of the lead. Not overall her percentage, just the lead was at that 20 to 30 point margin. Now it's much lower, down to 7.4. I wouldn't be shocked if by the end of July we see some more polls come out where Harris and Buttigieg are within 1 or 2 point of the leading average. And again, on the Republican side, no surprise, J.D. Vance is a commanding 30-point lead on that side of things. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like and subscribe if you did. Leave a comment below, tell me your thoughts, and I hope to see you in a future video. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's video. Today, I'm talking about Don Bacon and the Nebraska 2nd Congressional District and a very important ratings change from the Cook Political Report, a top nonpartisan political elections analysis website. And the article is behind a paywall, so I can't read all of it, but the first 2 paragraphs here are very important, and the rest of which I'll be explaining in this video. Aaron Covey, who wrote this piece, says that Nebraska's 2nd District was always going to host a crucial battle in the fight for control of the House. Kamala Harris won this district by 4.6%, making it, per the 2024 presidential results, the bluest district held by a House Republican. But GOP Representative Don Bacon, a retired Air Force general with a strong independent streak, had become one of his party's most formidable incumbents since he flipped this Omaha-based district in 2016, and Democrats universally regarded him as a tough opponent. Now that Bacon has decided to not run for re-election, we're moving this district from toss-up to lean Democrat. While this race remains highly competitive, Democrats should have an advantage in 2026, and it's become the #1 seat on the party's target list. So that's where things stand on that front. The Cook Political Report has moved this race from toss-up to lean Democrat. And you may be wondering why, even though the article kind of gave a very good explanation of why, but the Cook Political Report's Cook PVI map shows that this district is Democrat +3, which based on the margins of 1 to 5% being lean Democrat, this district you could say is a lean Democratic district. And now on the toss-up side of things, you can see here that this district, Nebraska's second, if I refresh the page here, you'll see is now on the lean Democratic side, making it the only Republican race that is currently favored to go to the Democrats. And when you look at this district, we'll look at 2024 here, we saw that Don Bacon won it by 1.9% against the Democrat Tony Vargas in a very close race. This district ended up voting for Bacon with 160,198 votes. Vargas got 154,369. So only roughly 6,000 votes separating Bacon and Vargas in this very close district. Back in 2022, Bacon was able to beat Vargas by 2.7% in this midterm election, which again was supposed to be a Republican-friendly midterm year. Bacon here got 112,663 votes. Vargas got 106,807. So again, roughly about 6,000 votes separating Vargas and Bacon in this district. And I'll be going more into the counties and such in this district in just a moment. But again, let's look at the election history here. This district, Nebraska 2, back in 2020, it seemed to be more of a red district here. Bacon won by 4.6%. 2018, Bacon won it by 2%. 2016, it went to Bacon by 1.2%. So even though you could argue maybe it was a little bit more red, it was still a very competitive district all the way back to 2016. And the Democrats, arguably, it was either even or the Democrats had still a very good chance of winning this. Back in 2014 was the last time a Democrat won it when Ashford won by 3.3%. Though a third-party vote getting 5.27% likely played a very big role here. So this district has been very close for a while. And I'm going to use on map.jacksonjude.com, a very great website, where you can use a comparison feature here. We're going to look at how this district in Nebraska has trended from 2016 to 2024. And from this time, it actually shifted 0.65% towards Don Bacon. When you look at it from 2016 to 2022, it shifted 1.5% towards Bacon. 2020 from 2016, 3.4. From 2018, 0.79. Now, let's go to when this district was redrawn in 2022, which it wasn't redrawn much, but it was redrawn a little bit. From 22 to 24, it shifted 0.82% towards Vargas. So even though this district overall has shifted towards Bacon in the election results from 2016 to 2024, from 22 to 2024, it actually shifted about 0.8% towards the Democrats. That's at the House level. At the presidential level, Nebraska is one of two states, as well as Maine, which does allocate its electoral votes by congressional or by House vote as well. So it actually works out that we can analyze the second district for how it's voted in recent presidential elections as well. Kamala Harris won this district by 4.7% in 2024. That is a lean Democratic margin, though it's closer to being likely Democratic than to being tilt in this scenario. So Harris clearly won here by a strong margin. As we can see, Douglas County, this is where the city of Omaha is, Kamala Harris won it by 10.1%. We can look back at 2020 now, where Joe Biden defeated Donald Trump in this district by 6.6%. In 2016, Donald Trump was the last time a Republican won this district by 2.2%, but it's worth noting Trump also got 47% of the vote. Clinton only got 44.9% with a lot of third-party vote. In 2020, Trump got 45.66%. 2024, Trump got 47%. This is the best Trump has done in this district, and it's still voted lean Democratic for Kamala Harris. Using that same comparison feature here, from 2020 to 2024, this district did shift 2 points towards Donald Trump. But it should be worth noting that in 2024, pretty much everywhere shifted towards Donald Trump except for Nebraska's 1st congressional district. But from 2024 to 2026, we're likely not going to see a map similar to 2024, as historically midterm elections are more favorable for the party not in charge of the White House. 2024 was a presidential election after 4 years of Joe Biden as president. The polls showed Joe Biden very much unpopular in those early polls and showed the Republicans should have a very good election, and that ended up happening. 2026, it should be the opposite. Democrats should be favored to have a very good night. Now, as always, that's not a guarantee. People still have to get out and vote, and things could always be different, but 2026 should be better for the Democrats. 2016 to 2024, this district actually shifted by 6.9% towards Kamala Harris from Hillary Clinton. Again, third-party vote likely played a big factor, but that is very significant. From 2012 to 2024, this district from Mitt Romney to Donald Trump shifted 11.8% towards the Democrats. So the district is trending in the Democratic direction at the presidential level. Now for 2026, all eyes are on this district now that Don Bacon has retired. There are some reports that Brett Lidstrom, the former state senator, is someone that's a close ally of Don Bacon, and Don Bacon may view him as someone that can run and win this district. But even still, it's going to be tough to win this district given its Democratic lean. It's sort of the Republicans can win here, but we're going to have to see it happen before we can believe that it can actually stay Republican. On the Democratic side, 4 Democrats are running. The nominee from 2022 and 2024, Tony Vargas, is not running. He has endorsed Denise Powell, but Evangelos Ariakis, John Kavanaugh, State Senator, Mark Johnson, and Denise Powell are all running, as well as Crystal Rhodes, Douglas County District Clerk, has expressed interest in running in this race. Any one of these Democrats being the Democratic nominee gives the Democrats a strong chance of winning this race, given how this district is drawn and made up and the areas in it. It's also worth noting that independent Dan Osborne, who ran for Senate in a very close election in 2024, got it under 10 points in the red state of Nebraska. Is very tough to do. He may run for this race as well. He's expressed interest. However, now that Bacon is not running, it's possible the Democrats who may have made a deal not to run a Democratic candidate against Osborne so they could have a Bacon versus Osborne election. Now that Bacon's not running, that likely is going to be off the table for the Democrats, and they want to have a Democrat representative. But Cook Politico and Sabo Crystal Ball being lean Democratic flips, this is going to be very important. Again, I want to show you these numbers and remember here. The presidential race, let me get to the compare part here. This district, Douglas County, voted for 10 points for Kamala Harris over Donald Trump in 2024. We're going to look at the 2024 election results for Don Bacon versus Tony Vargas, where Don Bacon won. It has 3 counties, Douglas, Saunders, and Sarpy. Trump likely did just as well, if not better, than Don Bacon in Sarpy and Saunders, or relatively marginally similar. Okay, so we have Saunders, which went 72-26 for Trump and Harris, and Sarpy, which went 54-43. And again, compare that to 2024, Sarpy was 66-34. So Bacon actually did much better than Trump in Sarpy County. So I do need to correct myself on that one. 76-24 in Saunders is about the same. The big difference here and why Trump lost this area, but Bacon won, was Douglas County. This is where the city of Omaha is, one of the largest cities in Nebraska. And Don Bacon lost this county to Tony Vargas, but by a much smaller margin. Vargas got about a 10,000 overall vote win margin out of Douglas County, about 10,300 votes. Margin of victory came out of Douglas County, 52 to 48% on the actual margins of victory here. So about a 4-point margin. Again, Kamala Harris won this area over Donald Trump by 10.1%. Now we can look at 2022. We really can't look at it this way due to how it looks, but again, we'll just compare these numbers to 2024. 2022, where Bacon defeated Vargas by 51.3, Vargas 48.7. Douglas County went 51-49 for Vargas versus Bacon. And again, 2% margin here, a smaller margin than it was in 2024, but very, very close. Bacon, despite losing Douglas County twice in 2022 and 2024, was able to keep this district competitive, keep it under 5%, and make it very close while running up the margins in Saunders County and Sarpy County enough to outgain the margins that the Democrat is going to get in Douglas. President Trump was not able to do that in 2024. With Sarpy and Saunders combined, his huge defeat in Douglas of 10 points was enough for Harris to win. Back in 2020, we saw this on an even larger scale, where Saunders won for Trump by 45.4. So Trump did a little bit worse here than he did in 2024. Sarpy went 11.3%. So Trump did relatively similar in Sarpy County, but again, Douglas was even more Democratic at 11.3% in 2020 compared to 10.1% for Harris in 2024. So Douglas County is the key here. If the Republican in 2026 is running similar to Don Bacon's numbers, in Douglas, they have a chance to win. But if they're running similar to President Trump's numbers in Douglas, the Republican is going to lose. And that's why the percentage margins out of Douglas County very early on election night in 2026 are going to be the key indicator here at how the Republican candidate is doing. Is the Republican candidate getting closer to Trump's numbers, or are they getting closer to Don Bacon's numbers? Last one to look at here, 2016, Donald Trump won this time around. Sarpy was 21.2% against Clinton, so a lot of third-party vote, but much more Republican for Trump. That was big. And Saunders, 46.3%, again, more third-party vote, but the margin of victory was relatively similar, 46.3%, more Republican than it was in 2020. But Douglas County, with the third-party vote factored in here, Clinton only got a 2.4% margin of victory in Douglas. Trump got 44.95%. This was definitely a very unique election, as we're likely not going to see a third-party vote number this high again, but this is the type of margin that a Don Bacon would get in this area. We're likely not going to see this in 2026. So when we talk about this House race in 2026, we can zoom in here on Nebraska's 2nd District. It all depends on how Douglas County, that's the red one, sorry, on how Douglas County is going to go in 2026, now that Don Bacon will not be the Republican incumbent. And if the Democrats can do well in Douglas County, then better than they did in 2022 and 2024, they really should not have much of an issue winning this district. The question will be, if the Republican they put up, Brett Lindstrom, or another Republican, are they up to the task at trying to match Bacon's numbers? If they can, they have a chance. But right now, I think Democrats are more likely to do better, similar to Kamala Harris's numbers in this district in 2026, than Don Bacon's numbers for the Republicans. And this gives the Democrats one of 3 flips they need to take back the House in 2026. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like and subscribe. If you did, leave a comment below. Tell me your thoughts on this video. And again, please remember to hit like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in a future video.